Ladies and gentlemen, I want to start tonight by asking a simple yet profound question. How many of us truly trust God? Now, I'm not just talking about the kind of trust that we say we have with our lips, but the kind of trust that we live out in our day-to-day lives. Trust is not just a word, it's an action, a powerful force that has the ability to transform everything in our lives. Many of us have heard the phrase, trust God. It's a phrase we repeat in times of hardship, during moments of joy, and often when we don't know what else to say. But I want to challenge you today, not only to say you trust God, but to understand the depth and power of what that truly means. Trusting God doesn't just change our circumstances. It changes us from the inside out. Trusting God leads to a transformed mindset. When you place your trust in God, it's as if a new perspective begins to take root in your life. Trust isn't just about a belief in something, it's about an inner shift that changes how we respond to the world around us. The way we see our challenges, our relationships, and even ourselves begins to transform. Our mindset shapes how we react to everything. The Bible tells us that as we renew our minds, we become more aligned with God's perfect will for us. Romans 12:02. Trusting in God rewires our thoughts and frees us from the mental shackles that hold us back. When we trust Him, our fears, insecurities, and doubts no longer have the power to dominate our decisions. This doesn't mean that we don't face difficulties or that the world becomes a perfect place, but our response changes. Let me share a story. A woman named Rachel had spent years living in constant anxiety. From a young age, she was taught that the world was unpredictable and that she had to control every outcome in her life. This belief kept her constantly on edge. She was a perfectionist, worried about her job, her health, her relationships. Every day, she felt overwhelmed, as if she had to constantly carry the weight of her fears and the expectations of others. But when Rachel learned to trust God, everything changed. Slowly but surely, she surrendered the control she thought she needed, and instead she leaned into God's ability to handle the uncertainties of life. Over time, she began to notice something remarkable. Her anxiety was no longer dictating her every move. When faced with a challenge, she didn't immediately spiral into worry. Instead, she prayed, found peace in trusting that God would guide her through, and took action from a place of calm assurance. The more she trusted, the more her mind was transformed. What once seemed like overwhelming problems now became opportunities to see God's faithfulness in her life. That shift in mindset didn't happen overnight, but it was a gradual and beautiful transformation that began with her decision to trust Him fully. This is the power of trust. Trusting God allows you to release the anxiety that often clouds your thinking. It helps you see that you don't have to handle every situation on your own. When your mind is aligned with God's truth, your fears become smaller and your faith becomes larger. You start to believe that no matter what happens, God has already gone ahead of you. As 2 Timothy 1:7 reminds us, God gives us a spirit of power, love, and a sound mind, not a spirit of fear. Trusting God opens the door to this freedom. Think about the weight you carry every day. The weight of worrying about your future, your children, your health, or your career. What if you could lay that down? What if you could begin to walk through your day with a mind that is anchored in peace? That's the gift of trust. Trust in God transforms your mindset from one of anxiety to one of hope. It frees you from constantly second-guessing and questioning your decisions. It empowers you to make choices not out of fear, but out of faith in the God who holds your future in His hands. When we choose to trust God, we unlock a flow of divine provision. There's something powerful that happens when we stop trying to figure everything out on our own and instead place our trust in the hands of the one who is able to supply all our needs. God is not just concerned with your spiritual life. He is deeply involved in every aspect of your well-being. your finances, your relationships, your health, and your emotional state. So often we're conditioned to believe that we must rely on our own efforts to provide for ourselves. We look at our bank accounts, our job opportunities, and our connections as the ultimate sources of our provision. But God has a different perspective. He owns everything. Psalm 24:01 says, "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it." If God owns it all, then why should we worry about our own provision? He has no shortage. He is more than able to provide for his children. The story of the widow of Zarephath offers a profound example of this principle. In the midst of a famine, when food was scarce, the prophet Elijah asked a widow to provide him with a meal. She explained that she had only enough flour and oil to make a small meal for herself and her son before they would die from starvation. The request seemed unreasonable, yet Elijah asked her to trust that God would provide for her. The widow, though uncertain, chose to trust. And when she did, she witnessed a miracle. The flour and oil did not run out, and they were able to eat throughout the famine. This wasn't just a miraculous moment for the widow, it was a lesson in the power of trust. The moment she decided to trust God, she opened herself to the provision he had waiting for her. The food did multiply until she took the first step in faith. God's provision often works this way. It's as though he's waiting for us to make the first move. When we trust him, we create the space for his provision to flow into our lives. It's a partnership between our faith and his faithfulness. Perhaps you're sitting here today thinking about your own financial struggles, your worries about the future, or the uncertainty you feel in your life. I want to challenge you. What would happen if you chose to trust God with your needs, just like the widow did? Trusting God isn't about ignoring your situation or pretending everything is okay. It's about saying, God, I don't know how this will work out, but I trust you to provide. It's choosing to believe that his resources are greater than any challenge you face. There's another powerful verse in Matthew 6:33 that says, "But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well." When you trust God, you open yourself to his divine provision in ways that your own efforts never could. He is a generous Father who knows exactly what you need, even before you ask for it. Trusting him isn't just about asking for provision. It's about living with an open heart that believes he will take care of you. In the same way that we trust him with our fears and our mindset, trusting God with our provision brings peace and assurance. The anxiety over money, over resources, over what's to come is no longer in control of your life. Instead, you can rest in the knowledge that your needs are in the hands of the one who has never failed and will never fail. Trusting God opens the door to a life of divine provision, where you no longer have to carry the burden of self-sufficiency alone. Trusting God does more than change your circumstances. It unlocks a deeper, more profound sense of purpose in your life. Many people spend their days searching for meaning, striving to achieve success, and hoping to find fulfillment. But when we trust God, we realize that our purpose isn't found in external achievements or accolades. It is found in him, in aligning our lives with his will, and in living for something greater than ourselves. When you trust God, you stop living merely for the approval of others or the accumulation of material things. Instead, you start living with a sense of mission, an understanding that your life has a divine purpose. You begin to recognize that your story is part of a much bigger narrative, one that God has already written for you. In this trust, you are given the clarity to see that your life is meant to serve others, to reflect God's love, and to fulfill his calling on your life. I've seen this transformation in people who felt lost or uncertain about their path. Take Mark, for example. He was a successful businessman who spent years climbing the corporate ladder. He had wealth, recognition, and security, yet he felt empty. No matter how much he achieved, he knew deep inside that something was missing. It wasn't until he made the decision to trust God completely that things began to shift. Mark started to ask himself, what is God's purpose for me in this life? It was in that moment of surrender that he discovered his true calling. Helping others start their own businesses, mentoring people who felt stuck, and using his success to give back to his community. The more Mark trusted God with his future, the more opportunities he saw to make a real difference in the lives of others. This shift didn't happen overnight. It took courage to trust God with his dreams, his career, and his identity. But when Mark aligned his goals with God's purpose, his life took on new meaning. His success was no longer about what he could gain, but about what he could give. His sense of fulfillment and joy grew not from personal achievement, but from making an impact on others' lives. This is the beauty of trusting God. It reveals the true purpose of our lives. When you trust Him, you stop chasing empty pursuits. Instead, you begin to see that every day is an opportunity to serve, to love, and to grow in ways that are eternal. Trusting God gives you the eyes to see beyond the temporary distractions of this world and focuses your attention on the eternal things that matter most. You start to understand that life isn't about achieving greatness for yourself, but about embracing the greatness of God's plan for you. And in doing so, you begin to live a life of significance. This is the call for all of us. When we trust God, we open ourselves to a life filled with purpose. No matter what field you're in or what season of life you're in, trusting God will reveal new opportunities to live for something greater than your own desires. Your life will no longer be about what you can accumulate, but about what you can give, what you can build, and how you can reflect the love of Christ to those around you. Trusting God transforms us into people who live with intention and meaning, moving through each day with a deeper sense of fulfillment that cannot be achieved through worldly success alone. Trusting God cultivates endurance through trials. Another powerful aspect of trusting God is the endurance it provides through life's trials. We all face moments of difficulty, loss, and pain. The storms of life come unexpectedly, and they often leave us feeling helpless and overwhelmed. But when we trust God, we discover that these trials are not the end. They are an opportunity for our faith to grow deeper and stronger. Trusting God doesn't mean that we won't go through hard times. In fact, Jesus himself told us that in this world we would have trouble, John 16:33. But he also reassured us that we could take heart because he has overcome the world. The reality is that when we trust God, we don't have to face our trials alone. We are not left to fight in our own strength. God walks with us through the darkest moments, providing the strength and endurance we need to make it through. Think about the Apostle Paul. He endured incredible hardships during his ministry, beatings, imprisonments, shipwrecks, and countless other trials. Yet, throughout all of this, Paul's trust in God never wavered. In 2 Corinthians 12:9, Paul writes, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me." Paul understood that it was through his weakness, his dependence on God, that God's power was made perfect. The trials he faced were not opportunities for him to give up. They were opportunities for God to show his strength in the midst of his weakness. When you trust God, you begin to see your trials as tools for growth rather than as obstacles that will defeat you. Each difficulty becomes an opportunity to lean on God's strength, to deepen your trust in his plan, and to see his faithfulness in action. Trials have a way of refining us, shaping our character, and making us more like Christ. They teach us to rely not on our own understanding, but on the wisdom and provision of God. There is a man named Samuel who, after years of hard work and perseverance in his career, suddenly faced a season of setbacks. He lost his job, his health took a turn for the worse, and he found himself questioning everything he had worked for. Samuel was devastated, but instead of letting the trials define him, he made the decision to trust God with his future. He didn't know how he would get through, but he trusted that God had a plan for him. As he leaned on God, Samuel experienced strength he never thought possible. He didn't give up. He kept pushing forward, trusting that God would make a way. Eventually, Samuel's health improved and he found a new job, one that aligned with his passions and allowed him to help others in a way he had never imagined. Through his journey, Samuel learned that trust in God didn't make the trials disappear, but it gave him the endurance to keep going. When we trust God, we gain the stamina to endure the difficult seasons of life. We learn to wait patiently on His timing, to trust His wisdom, and to know that He is with us in every moment. Trusting God through trials is a choice we make every day. It's about surrendering our pain, our fears, and our doubts to Him. It's about believing that God is working all things together for our good, even when we can't see it. When we trust God, we find that our endurance is not based on our own strength, but on the power of God to carry us through. And in the process, we emerge stronger, wiser, and more confident in the faithfulness of the God who has been with us every step of the way. As we reflect on the journey of trusting God, I want you to remember that trust is not just a passive belief. It is an active, powerful choice. It is a choice to surrender control, to release fear, and to walk in faith, knowing that God has already gone ahead of you. Trusting God transforms your mindset, opens the door to His divine provision, reveals your true purpose, and strengthens you through life's challenges. No matter what you face, no matter where you are in life right now, know this: you are not alone. God is with you and He is faithful. Trusting Him doesn't mean everything will be perfect, but it means that with God by your side, nothing is impossible. It means that even when life throws its hardest trials at you, you can stand firm, knowing that He is your rock and your refuge. I challenge you today to make that choice. Trust Him with your fears. Trust Him with your dreams. Trust Him with your future. Let your trust in God be the anchor that holds you steady, the light that guides your path, and the strength that carries you through. As you take that step of trust, you will experience the transformation that comes from knowing the Creator of the universe is your Father, your provider, and your protector. You will see His hand move in your life in ways you never thought possible. And in trusting Him, you will find peace, purpose, and the endurance to face whatever comes your way. Trust God and watch how He transforms your life. Thank you.